Sure. So I've been vegan since 2012. So it's 10 years now. I had my daughter. She was born in February. And that wasn't exactly the catalyst that brought me here, but I think it had a great influence. Um, a few years before, I lost a child as well, and I think everything in that journey of my life sort of led me here, but I didn't even know it until I connect the dots retrospectively.
Mm.
But I think that had to do something with it as well because the loss has been profound and it impacted me greatly. That was 5 years before my daughter was born. And before that, 4 years before that, I had my son born safely, thankfully. And when he was about 3 years old, my son, as a toddler, he developed this real passion for sharks. Like deep, deep passion for sharks that we had to open encyclopedias and websites and learn about cetaceans and sharks and because I had no idea. I knew a great white shark and that, hammerhead shark and that practically summarized everything I knew about
Yeah.
sharks, or probably also that great white sharks eat people, which was also totally false. And so, because he was enthralled by this whole idea of sharks, you want as a parent, you want to be a good parent and kind of enrich your child's knowledge and
Mm.
support them, and also the enjoyment of researching things together, even though he was just a child, a toddler. But it gave us pleasure to learn about it with him. And through his eyes and through what I learned, and a whole world opened up to me. This whole world about this whole world, the ocean world, and what we're doing to it, the catastrophe that we bring on it, the overfishing, the shark finning, the whaling, the dolphins that are butchered in various places in the world, Taiji, Japan, and also Faroe Islands, etc. All that I lived quite a sheltered life. I had no idea, and I considered myself, I think, most of my life being an animal lover because I had a dog, and I really loved it always, and I still have dogs, and I have a rabbit now as well. But I always considered myself to be an animal lover, and suddenly I realized that I didn't know anything at all about what's going on out there, and I was shocked, I think, and I um, discovered Sea Shepherd as well because through all this, learning, and I came into conservation and activism, etc., etc., and I really loved Sea Shepherd because it's so badass, yeah. And I wanted like my son was only 3, but in my mind I could see ourselves when he was, I don't know, 15, jumping on a Sea Shepherd ship and going to the Southern Ocean and, fighting all the whalers and the research, quote unquote, and chasing them off and protecting the whales and all that. And there was a point where one of the ships of Sea Shepherd came to dock in Wellington, which is where I live, Wellington, New Zealand, and they came to dock there, and I came about this news or information that they are vegan. So the ships are vegan, the kitchens are vegan. You have to be adjusting to a full vegan lifestyle if you want to join the ship. And I thought, what the heck? Because it's one thing to go and defend whales and all that, but go vegan for that. I mean, you're a bit extreme. So I thought, you know what? I need to understand why that is. And just because when I when I was really young, and that was in the 70s, so you can figure out how old I am now, that my family had a friend who was vegan, and that's probably the only vegan in the entire country. I don't know, that certainly that I knew of. And I don't even recall. She was very old, and I thought she was the kind of people who would, go without a bra and eat nettles. That was my vision of what veganism was. And that's how I grew up. And so it was so weird suddenly that it was right there and so close to me. I had to find out more about it. And And I think it was such a slap in the face because I just realized I didn't know anything about dairy at all. Because, the cows give us milk, and happy cows, you just press the button and the milk comes out and whoop-de-doo. They're not suffering, right? What's wrong with that? I think I had such a slap in the face. Basically, just going into Google or the web and finding out about dairy. The information was all there, but it wasn't on the media. It wasn't right out there. You had to find it. And for the first time in my life, I went to find it, and I found it, and it shocked me and it embarrassed me that I was a mature adult with a child and a baby, and I had no idea what was going on in the dairy industry and how cows are sexually exploited and how they are forced into pregnancies and they carry their children for 9 months, just like a female. Did you hear that? Sorry, some email came in. Yeah, and the cows carried their children for 9 months, and then for the children, the babies, the calf were taken away from them by force, and they would go mental. They would chase them and try to get them back, and the babies were killed. In New Zealand, calves are killed when they're 4 days old. That's nothing. They're barely standing up because we had such a surplus of them. There's nothing to do with them. They're basically sent to slaughter at 4 days old, and we send to slaughter around 2 million every year. 2 million calves every year. I just came back this weekend. We had an action documenting near a slaughterhouse, and this is calving season now. And I actually saw calves. Yeah, it's still burning inside me. That is very effective. Trucks over trucks of little babies. They're so small they can't even reach the slits to look out. It's amazing. It's just so they look like little puppies and suck your fingers. It's shocking. So I found out about it and immediately I thought that I can't drink another drop of milk. I just couldn't do it. And I knew then that I had to become vegan right there and then. No baby steps, no journeys or anything like that. That's it. My husband was vegetarian for years and years, and I remember that moment where it hit me, and I was in the kitchen, and he was right next to me. I was cutting some vegetables, whatever, and I told him, you know what, we need to go vegan. We need to go vegan now. And that's it. I became vegan from that day. I just verbalized it. I had to get it out of my system. I verbalized it. I said it. It was out there. And since then I'm vegan. And my husband, thankfully, he said, why? Because he was surprised. Like, why do you want to go vegan? Like, what, you want to go hippie and eat nettles or whatever? So he looked into it, and yeah, within about 2 weeks, he joined me, and we have been vegan, all of us, ever since, and the children as well. So my son was already a young boy, but he transitioned into veganism, and my daughter was just a baby, so it was a little bit easier. And all of us are vegan, and that's it. And so that was 10 years ago. But I felt that it wasn't enough, really, just being vegan. It felt like the bare minimum because when you because when I turned vegan in where I live, I didn't know any other vegans. I was completely on my own. So it was completely feeling my way as I went. Um, I joined a Facebook group for vegans in Wellington. There were about 800 people on it at the time. I didn't know any of them personally. Now there's like 5,000 or more, I think, but then it was about, I think, less than 800. And so I didn't. They were doing excursions into supermarkets to show us where to find vegan food because there was really nothing, like some cardboard taste flavored tofu, and basically that's it. The world has changed greatly since then. But I felt, the food element of it, I learned and it developed, and I learned how to cook better, and my skill as a cook, as a home, because I'm a home cook. I cook the children's meals. Um, my and you want to provide your children with all the nutrients that they need and not to be lacking in anything. So I learned as I went. I learned from books, the internet, and I think I'm pretty good, right? I'm kind of a decent cook right now, but I felt that focusing on the food is not enough, because I saw through Facebook, through social media, I was exposed to vegan animal rights activism in the world, including in the UK, in Australia, and other countries in the world, all over Europe, and of course in America as well, and some other countries, Israel and stuff. And it really empowered. I felt so motivated by it. I thought, this is, you have to, it's nice to share a picture of a cupcake, but you need to reach out, you need to speak up, you need to. And I felt because I just felt it started really burning. And that's kind of my personality, I don't, when I found the truth, the shocking truth of what happens to the animals, and of course I saw a lot of, slaughterhouse footage and all that. You kind of, I went into it, and I was eventually swamped by it. I felt that I need to speak up as well, that I couldn't stay silent. And I didn't know anyone in my area. So I just, again, jumped into social media, which was mainly Facebook. And I saw that there's an action near the slaughterhouse in Wellington. I thought, yeah, well, I'll go and do it. So I joined. I just went. I made a sign, like a huge sign. I made it from like a huge A1 um, cardboard, and I put a picture of a slaughtered cow, and I put a sign, and I just came, and whoop de doo, and all these people that were there at that day are now my best friends. So I say I met my family that day, because there is your family, the one you're born to, you don't choose, but there's also the family you do choose, and I met the family of my choice that day. And we've been doing activism ever since. And of course, I felt I grew. I've grown as an activist since then. I assumed some leadership roles. So I don't like the word leadership. No, it's kind of a tall poppy thing. But I'm kind of I organize activities, and yeah, I mentor, and I like to be there for other activists, especially young activists or just new people who just join. We have people join all the time. We have people who used to work in dairy farms who join us, and we have all people from all walks of lives, all walks of life, and every gender, every every human being you can think of, we have, because veganism is everyone, is for everyone. It is everyone. It's not limited to some people with this kind of view of the world or that kind of view of the world. Is really for everyone. And yeah, so the funny thing about that sign that I made the first day is that it had a picture of a slaughtered cow. I thought it was very, you know, fitting to have a punchy picture. And what we were doing with the slaughterhouse in Wellington is over a hill, and pretty. It's hidden from sight. You can't see it unless you know it's there. So I lived in Wellington a few years before I realized even that there's a slaughterhouse there. But drivers go up that hill, and they don't even realize what's up, because there's no signage, there's no nothing. If you don't know deliberately where you're going, you wouldn't find, or just follow a slaughterhouse slaughter truck up the hill, you won't know. So apparently some of the drivers were very offended by my sign, and they called the police, and the police came. And the thing is that because it's up the hill, it's very exposed to the elements, and when you get a windy day or a rainy day, it's very hard and very, very harsh to, like, you can't hold a banner or a sign if it's really windy, because Wellington is the windy city. Yeah, because I used to live in Edinburgh I studied in Edinburgh University, and they used to say Edinburgh is the windy city, and then I came to Wellington. I was like, oh, no, it isn't, because Wellington is. And so anyway, I had to put the sign down on the ground, facing down, because otherwise it would have just blown away. And when the police came, it was facing down on the ground. And I stood on it because I didn't want it to blow away from the ground. So they couldn't even see what was the problem, because all the other signage was pretty lame and tame. And yeah, so they just say, "Oh, I don't know what's the problem is." So yeah, keep going. They didn't see my sign at all. But yeah, so that was my first activism stint. Yeah.
I'm intrigued as to the sort of how intrinsic the dairy industry is in New Zealand, and how, for somebody who hasn't experienced life in New Zealand, I'd just love to kind of find out just how intrinsic that is, and then from an activist's point of view, how has that kind of informed your activism? Is that a particular area of focus for you as an activist in New Zealand? How do the general kind of population respond to that kind of activism? I'd love to get a picture of it.
Yeah. It's a very touchy area, because dairy is considered the backbone of our economy in New Zealand. Not really thinking about the billions of dollars that this industry is in debt. But if you don't think about the billions of dollars of debt that the industry currently have, the kind of it's there's a very romantic view of what dairy farming is in New Zealand, and there used to be for a long time, until people from within the industry turned vegan and started to speak up. And we have some really powerful, especially women, that come from this industry and have become powerful activists. We have, and they speak up, and kind of they shed that romantic notion, and they break it down to bits. The thing is that farming in New Zealand, people are still considered dairy farmers as, salt of the land kind of people, true Kiwi blue, um, and when you speak up against it, you are seen as the townie, and there is a lot of playing on the townie and country divide, which is completely false, because you have a lot of country folks that are vegan now and animal rights activists. But it's really hard to go against this industry in New Zealand. And we had protests outside of dairy farms. And recently, there was also a documentary film made by some of my good friends. It's called Milked, which I strongly recommend watching, because it really shows that a lot of the farmers are trapped in this industry. They have no support, they have nowhere to go. They own a lot of money, and they're trapped in it, and they don't want to do it, but there's no other options, because the government doesn't support them to transition into plant-based farming or to do something else. And farmers really want to, and they can't. And it's really sad, because farmers themselves, the people, are not the problem. We don't hate them. I don't hate anybody. I don't want to feel like there's a war between us and farmers. There isn't. We want to help them transition out of farming into plant-based farming. So this whole conversation is building up. It's building and building, and it's gaining momentum. Over the past few years, there's more and more voices, especially not now with climate change, and the catastrophic effect of dairy on the climate. Um, and so the conversation is now becoming more and more mainstream. of course, the problem is that the more we talk about farming as a problem, the farmers feel more and more like they're under attack. So we need to really make sure that it's not, our conversation is not about the farmers, it's about the dairy industry and how we need to completely phase out of it and into a plant-based economy, which is possible. New Zealand used to be a whaling nation, and if you come to New Zealand, you go to Kaikoura on the South Island. There's a museum about how whales used to be slaughtered there, and there's the whole hullabaloo about it. But we don't do that anymore. Times have changed. We have grown. We have changed. So this is time. It's time to do it as well. And you can see, actually, I remember, I don't know how long, a few months ago, I was driving to work, and before Corona, so that was like 2 years ago actually, and I heard someone from the dairy industry here in New Zealand, from maybe the farmers collective or whatever, that they were saying that because of climate change, farmers need to transition, and we need to consider more plant-based farming. And that was a revolutionary to hear it from people from within the industry, high up there. And I know some slaughterhouses now invest in importing things like the Impossible Burger to New Zealand. So they understand themselves that they need to diversify or they will collapse. So this, I believe, this understanding exists within those industries, but there's understanding and there's talk, and I think the level of talk is still very much, we need it and this is what we are, and blah blah blah. But I think it's inevitable that the change will come. I just hope it doesn't come too late for us all, because I'm very worried about climate change. It's very concerning.
Yeah, 100%. I suppose there is some. I mean, I'm encouraged to hear that there's a conversation going on. I sometimes think, in the UK, obviously animal agriculture is kind of fairly intrinsic, and there's definitely that. I completely relate to that country versus like if you criticize anything to do with animal agriculture, it's probably because you're uninformed, is at least the sort of perspective. It's because you live in a city or you're from a town, or therefore you don't understand it. But like you say, I think it's a crucial part of our conversation, that we need to be talking about transitioning. We want farmers, we just want them to be veganic, like that would be perfect. But it's encouraging that the conversation's there, and at least there's some acceptance. I still think we're still in a denial phase quite a lot in the UK, particularly around climate change. I suppose it depends on which news outlet you're looking at, but I still feel like there's a bit of an entrenchment of views, and it's sort of denied that there's bigger connection. I read an article only yesterday where the headline didn't, as or normal, the headline didn't necessarily speak to the text, but the headline was essentially going vegan isn't all that effective as they say it is for climate change. It turned out that wasn't necessarily the crux of the article, but it's really interesting that was carried by 2 or 3 of the major papers as the headline. It was on a Channel 5 daytime show. There was a debate about it, this kind of stuff, and it does make me think, we're not even at the stage where we're accepting there's a connection. Sometimes I suppose it's the danger of our vegan bubble. Sometimes we can think we're ahead.
Yeah, I think there is also the element of having a clickbait, slogan, title that will drive people in. And when you put something vegan on the title, people will go go and check it out wherever. It's even maybe the word vegan would not even be mentioned in the entire thing. But yeah, it's pretty bad.
It'd be good to understand from your perspective where the crossover from the kind of activism that you've been involved in, quite direct, non-violent action, all across the kind of gamut of activism, Sea Shepherd, etc. All these kind of interests that you've had, and then what landed you at writing. I'm really fascinated.
So, other than being a mother, and I also work full time, and a vegan and an animal rights activist, I'm also a reader. I really love reading, and I always did. I don't have any kind of sophisticated taste, and I like the kind of books that make my heart race, like the um, thrillers and detective or whodunit and suspense books. Not so much horror, but really a good thriller would make me very happy. And I really like reading for as leisure, and because also after I come back, like I just came back from an action, and I have my energy level is I'm very wired, and I need something to help me get back to normality and to balance my energy levels a little bit. So I find reading very relaxing, even though I like thrillers. I know it's just literature, and I enjoy diving into it and forgetting myself a little bit in the book. And I found that actually, since becoming vegan, picking up books was becoming a bit hard because I picked up a book. It was like a bestseller, or someone recommended it to me, or whatever. I picked up a book. It looks really promising, and the the whole point of a book that you want to identify with the protagonist, or at least like them a little bit, so that you identify with them. So if they're in danger, your heart races. If they run away from danger, you want them to survive. Da, da, da. And I found it becoming really, really difficult for me, because you pick a book and then suddenly you see I would categorize I would categorize the problems in literature, in mainstream literature, to three categories. There's the speciesism, there's the animal cruelty, and then there's the anti-vegan sentiments, which is kind of recent. So with speciesism, I hope everyone knows what speciesism is, but basically it's like sexism, and it's like racism. Speciesism is the same, but with species. So that it's our perceived human supremacy over all other species, that we somehow are higher in value and dominance over other species. We're worth more, but not only that, as dominance, we also um, decide between other species which one is worth more and which one is worth less, so that dogs are, well, fantastic, let's protect them, and if we find that they're being experimented on, we have to raise hell. But if it's done the same on pigs and cows, well, we don't care all that much. So that's speciesism. Um, and so in that same manner, you will have a protagonist or just a character in the book who would have a dog and it was sweet and everything, but then they would feed it bacon, or feed themselves bacon, and go and have a party and have a pig on a spit and things like that. I mean, I just, every time that I read kind of book, I thought, oh no, gross, gross, gross. And my enthusiasm would drain, and I would fall out with with that character, and I was like, oh, okay, get yourself killed, I don't care. And it's just became a bit of a chore to read. It wasn't entertaining. And there's some books have blatant animal cruelty. I mean, we're all familiar with a very, very successful trilogy about a girl who goes on a dystopian TV show to kill everyone else and survive. And we all want her to survive, but we don't care all that much that she is also hunting, you know, in the forests. So, and that bothers me. That whole hunting thing bothers me. It bothers me equally as when she needs to kill her peers, which is
Mm.
insane. And in recent years, also, I found that sometimes it's still quite rare, but you might find a character in the book who is vegan, or at least hinted as vegan, and they're always kind of the comic relief of the whole thing. They're kind of the annoying, uh, picky, killjoy person, probably usually a woman, because it's also a little bit sexist. And men are, they need meat. So it's just becomes reading for me has just been destroyed And even though I kept reading and I still read books that have all these issues, I don't find myself enjoying it as much. And because I also have been writing all my life, ever since I was a little girl, I've been writing, and I have a lot of things in my drawers. My drawers are so full, but I never published. And then it occurred to me somewhere in 2016 that, it doesn't exist, because I've been looking for vegan fiction books and I couldn't find anything. And certainly nothing that was deliberately vegan or for vegans. And I thought, okay, it doesn't exist. Maybe I can write it. I'll write it myself. And the it was actually before 2016. 2016 was when the book was almost finished for its first draft. But I think it was around 2014 when I was starting to think that. And took me a while. My method of writing is really like having a baby. Really, I feel like I have I'm just gestating with my book, and it kind of builds up inside my mind. It's builds and builds, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, this, and it builds and builds and builds so much that by the time I was ready to write it down, whole chapters were already writing themselves, because all I had to do was download from my brain to Word, and I just sat and so
Wow.
within 3 months I had a first draft. The thing and that was the Shed. The Shed is the first book in the trilogy, and I didn't mean to write a trilogy. I just thought I'd write one book. And the thing with the Shed also is that as I've been writing, the setup was to write a book that would be safe for vegans to read, that they will enjoy, and it will be ours, and no problem at all, no speciesism or that. But then very early on, I decided that this is a brilliant opportunity, not just to write a book for vegans, but to make it an outreach tool and write a book that pre-vegans, I used to call them non-vegan, but now I call them pre-vegan, because I really like the idea that everyone can change, so that pre-vegans can read and enjoy and get it, get hooked. I'm against fishing, but if we can fish pre-vegans into veganism, well, hey, then that's a success. So I've written the Shed for vegans and pre-vegans equally, and it is a dystopian thriller, where the focus is really about dairy. Um, I don't want to give away too much, but the I really like. I remember as a child, I read Animal Farm by George Orwell, and I really liked how the pigs, like Napoleon, and that they represent humanity. They represent people, and through them, you could really understand the ideas. I think it was Stalinism or something, and I wanted to do the same, but in reverse, or turn it on its head, so that the people I use, represent the dairy industry. And so we have Sunny, who is my protagonist, who is actually a dairy cow, but she's a girl. And she is grown on a farm. It's a very weird place, because she doesn't know that she's a dairy, cow or whatever. She doesn't know that she's a product. And it's a futuristic area, the futuristic time, unknown place. I didn't want to pinpoint where it is. It can be New Zealand, it can be England, it could be Scotland, whatever, UK, United States, wherever. And the thing is also that there's a talk about the post-catastrophic world. So there has been climate change has destroyed the planet, and this is like centuries from now, so that most of life has been wiped out. There are no animals, which is why we need dairy cows who are women. And it is a thriller. So because Sunny needs to survive, and the story follows her journey out and into a very weird and hostile world, but where there are activists, because in that world, people also, there are the slaves who are exploited and used and abused and killed and all that, but there are also the activists who fight for the freedom. So, um, and yeah, that was, I read in the shed. I tried to publish it with main, publishing houses. Um, they said, just, go to, don't talk to us, go to a literary agent. So I sent it to, the way it works with literary agents is that you send the first, well, back then anyway, I don't know, things may have changed since then, but send the first three chapters or something like that, and if they like it, they go back to you and say, send the rest. So I sent my book to, J.K. Rowling said, how many did she send before she heard back? I don't know, 20? I probably hit 70. Like, really crazy numbers before I thought, this is not working. And the thing is that they did ask for it back. There were quite a few who really loved it, and they asked to see the rest. And some of them actually said, wow, this is great. I don't know how to represent you. And I've been told, this is niche. This is niche kind of book, and I don't know how to represent you, or we don't want to know how to represent you. So yeah, good luck with your next agent. And I'm like, I was thinking, this is niche. This isn't niche because it's a thriller that is really wide-reaching. It's not. It is for everybody, for vegans, for pre-vegans. Everyone will enjoy it, because really I was trying not to make it in your face. The other books kind of did that, but for the first one, I was very gentle. I didn't do it. I didn't go all guns blazing, because the idea was to get the pre-vegans hooked. And I thought, no, this is not niche. This is a thriller. It's for everybody. But then I thought, you know what? Even let's pretend this is niche. This is such an exponentially growing potential niche. Like, look what's happening. It was really such a lack of foresight for all these, people, agents, etc., and publishing houses that I actually gave up for a while. The book was ready in 2017. And only when I discovered the Amazon KDP platform for self-publishing that I actually thought, oh, I can do this. And I did. And I know Amazon is the big bad wolf and all that, but um, it, I don't mind giving it its money if my book if my book is out there and helping our cause, which is the only purpose for me, why the reason why I wrote the book in the end, because I see it's been working. I get messages, I get feedback from pre-vegans who tell me that the penny drop. I just put something on my social about, I just a couple of days ago, someone wrote to me, I finished reading the trilogy and I quit dairy. So for me, there can't be any better feedback than that.
No.
And people started reading the shed. There's a whole so I put it out there. It was out, and I was like, yes, now all the vegans in the world, all the vegans in New Zealand, all the vegans in the UK and the US, and everyone, millions of people are going to read it, and like, yeah, we're going to have great reviews and all that. And then you know, tumbleweed, crickets, nothing happens because you have to put on the hard work. It's, publishing is the easy part. It's the selling. It's the to make people know that they exist and that you exist and that it's great, and build up your readership base and your followers and people who would read and give it to their friends and recommend it. And my books did really well word of mouth, because people, I recommended. I said, you liked it, great, give it to your friend, give it to your sister, your brother, your son, daughter, whatever. Give it, share the love. A friend of mine left a copy in Berlin airport, and someone who traveled New Zealand once told me that they left a copy in a hostel on Stewart Island, which is like the southernmost Island, like the tiny little thing that is connected to the South Island of New Zealand. Beautiful space. So, my books made it all over the world, and people left them just for other people to pick up, which I think is amazing. And then as people kept reading them, they said, well, we want more. I never meant to write a trilogy, you see. I just thought I'll write The Shed, and this is great. I love it, and done. I can rest. But people wanted more, and people wanted to know more what happened to Sunny, because they kind of identified with her, even though she's supposedly not really a human, not representing a human, but she becomes an activist. So a lot of people want her to succeed. And so I continued. I wrote the second book, which is called Liberation, also published. By then, I thought, well, I'm not going to bother, just straight on to Amazon. And it came out in February 2020, just as the coronavirus reared its head. And yeah, so it was really hard to promote. It was the yeah, the second book was really hard to promote, even though everyone was home. So perfect scenario for reading, but people had suffered financially and were very anxious and stressed, and couldn't really give it the attention. So yeah, and it came out, and I thought, with the second book, I kind of I took my gloves off, because The Shed was quite gentle with the vegan message is there throughout, and very clearly, and also on the back of the back cover, where you have to put a little spiel about yourself. I put, I'm not hiding. I don't want to say I'm not what I am. So I put that I'm a vegan activist. It's part of my identity. It's part of who I am. It's important to me that people who pick up the book will pick up the book knowing this and won't be afraid. And I do have a lot of pre-vegans reading it and getting back to me. And so with the second book, I thought, okay, so all the pre-vegans read The Shed, and it's a thriller, right? It's got a lot of, twists and turns and cliffhangers and all that. So they want to read the rest. So with the Liberation, I allowed myself kind of to be a little bit more, come out with the guns blazing, basically, about not just veganism, but being an activist, how important it is, and not bow your head to the mainstream, but really go and defend those who need defending, and liberate those who need liberation. And I've it kind of it doesn't end with a cliffhanger exactly, but you can imagine that there is more coming. But really, I didn't plan to keep it going. I said, no, I'm not going to have a trilogy. Everyone's writing a trilogy. No, I'm writing two books. And I even had I think my first ever interview was with Vegan FDA, and I told them no, and they asked what's coming, and I said nothing. I don't think I'm going to write the third book. But within a few months, I started getting those, messages and emails. Where's the rest of it? We have to, and I realized that people want catharsis. And I didn't give them the catharsis. I didn't give them the ending that will, you know, uh, 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 that will please them, that will make them feel, yes, we can do it. If it can be done in the literature world, maybe we can do it in our world. And so I had to give them something to hold on to, like this hope. Um, so I wrote the third book. Even my dad is not vegan. My mom is vegan. My dad is not vegan, though they're divorced, so they don't influence each other. But my dad is not vegan, but I would say he's sympathetic. And he read the second book, and he's old. He said to me one day, I don't want to die before you finish it. So I had to do it before he's still alive. Bless him, he's fantastic. But so I had a lot of motivation to finish the saga, and so came the third book was published in July last year. It's called It Was in Our Hands. and because it is in our hands. And this is kind of the message that I wanted to convey to readers. Although this is a book about who knows when in the future, it's what we do now that will define what happens then. If then even exists, maybe we'll destroy everything and nothing will survive. But we have to look at what we do now, and all the blood that we spill and the climate that we destroy. We cause so much pain. We cause so much destruction. So it is really in our hands now to make the changes that will make a difference. And so the third book is the end. It really is the end. There is no more. It's a very clear ending. But and I won't share more because it is still um, it's I think it's the bloodiest book of all of them. It's got the most body counts, but and it's fast pacing. It's fast pacing. You can't The feedback that I get the most about my books is that I couldn't put it down. I had to read it in one go, two goes, and then so the third book doesn't fail in that respect as well, but I had to give it a closure. And yeah, I finished it. Woohoo! And now I need to think about other things to write for vegans and non-vegans.
Well, what's been the reaction like? I mean, it's been award nominated, award winning. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. Were you expecting that kind of reaction?
I never do. I Writing is such a weird experience. When I wrote The Shed, because it was my first book that I knew that I was going to publish, I've written the things before that I knew that that will never see the light of day. But as I've written the manuscript for The Shed, I knew that I'm going to publish it, no matter somehow. And I had kind of a relationship with this book, because at one point I thought, oh, this is so good, and then 5 minutes later, oh, this is rubbish. I don't No one is going to read it. That self-doubt, and it's such a emotional process. And so when it's finally out there and people really respond loving it and all that, it's such a gratification to everything that you poured into it, and all that emotion and the pride. It's like a child that you bring into this world. And I was really happy because it got really, really good feedback. And unbeknown to me, it's been put into all sorts of awards, and I got some gold stars and some silver stars, and really good, really, really good feedback. Amazing feedback. Really, I'm so chuffed. I think one of the things that I also hear a lot about is that these books will translate beautifully into films, or Netflix, or some form of mainstream media like that. And I've heard it so much that I thought, you know what, maybe I can write the playwright with the script, the playwright, and the screenplay. And I never written a screenplay before. That's been a few months ago now. I've never written. I didn't even know what a screenplay looked like, because it has a very specific structure, and the way you write it is very kind of has to be precise. So I started learning. I just downloaded heaps of screenplays, and um, started analyzing. And I thought, how do I want just The Shed, not all three, just The Shed. How do I want it to be? Because it's really, to convey the vegan message in a book is much easier, because there's a lot of in between the lines and messages, and some things that you can convey that you can't convey on a script, because if it's not in the scene description or in the um, dialogue, it's really hard to explain. So I had to really put a lot of emphasis on, I don't want it. I don't want people to miss the message here. Um, you know, I have to write it in a way that doesn't dilute the message. So I started writing, and I did make a few changes from the book to the script, but I kept it quite tidy, and quite, if you read the script and then you read the book, you'll say, oh yeah, and I know it's very few changes, but I had to make a few changes. And I started sending, and yeah, I had it I written it. I thought, oh, this will take ages, but it actually was a pretty exciting process. So I had the script, and I sent it to this body in America that does reviews. They review your script, and then they tell you, they give you a marking, and tell you what you should change and all that. And I got the script back, and it was really, really good feedback. Like, I got 8.5 overall marking out of 10, which was really high. And someone who really, really loved it and was very encouraging and said, yeah, you need to put it in competitions and that, because I didn't even, this whole Hollywood thing, I can't tell you how far away it is from my world, right? I mean, the whole thing about script and production and movies and all that, it is so not, has no touch on my life at all, except for what I consume as a consumer. And so I entered this world. It was so weird, like, entered competitions, and people who judge your script are people who made some of the movies that you watched, and it's just weird. It's a bit surreal, this whole thing. And yeah, I got the furthest I got was, I got laurels as a semi-finalist in the Santa Barbara competition, which was awesome, because semi-finalist laurels are just phenomenal.
Yeah.
um, so far, I can't say that anything has happened to the point where this is going to be made into a film, but these things tend to take time, and I learned to be patient. But yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. If you're a if you are a Hollywood producer and listening to this podcast, please contact me.
I don't know how many Hollywood producers do, but I hope there is one of them listening now. It would be phenomenal to see this on the
Yeah.
on the big screen. But Maya, it's been amazing chatting with you. I think it's an incredible thing that you've done here, and a really different take on activism, and a much needed one, I think, bringing storytelling to the fore here. It would be remiss of us not to tell folks where they could go about finding out a little bit more and picking up a copy of all three of your amazing books.
Yeah, so it's on Amazon. So if you are in the UK, which I assume many are, so this Amazon UK, just look for the Liberation Trilogy. There is a page, the Liberation Trilogy. I write them. All my books are written under pen name M.C Ronen. That's Ronen with an E. So M.C Ronen is my pen name, and the Liberation Trilogy is the overall title. Also, you can join come pop into my website. It's mcronenauthor.com.
Wonderful stuff. Well, we'll make sure the links to all of those things are in the show notes, and encourage everyone to pick up a copy of all three books, and hopefully, fingers crossed, like I said, we'll see it on the big screen as well soon. Amazing stuff. Maya, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much.